In this video, we're going to be talking about a huge Supreme Court order that was just issued, and it's going to have significant impacts on the upcoming election. This decision by the Supreme Court will determine whether or not non-citizens will be able to vote and influence our upcoming election. So let's talk about what just happened with this emergency order. Now, really quick before we jump into this video, I want to ask you guys for a huge favor. Looking at some of my analytics, about 60% of all my viewers are actually not subscribed to the channel. So please consider subscribing to the channel if you find value in this video, share it around, and then also click the notification bell and turn on all notifications, because that is one way to ensure that YouTube will actually send you these videos once I release them. But regardless, thank you guys so much for all of your support. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about a very important emergency election order that was just issued by the United States Supreme Court. That's right, the Supreme Court just issued an emergency order which is going to impact the upcoming election. This emergency order by the Supreme Court allows the state of Virginia and potentially other states to move forward with removal programs that they have in place, which remove non-citizens from the voter rolls within those states. This, of course, has the Harris campaign and the liberals up in arms because they're so concerned about the potential removal of non-citizens from their ability to vote in our upcoming election. And with the election just days out now, this is a huge decision that we need to talk about, and we need to talk about what happens now going forward, because the Supreme Court emergency order is impacting not just the election right now, but it's going to have future implications, and it's also going to be in place for a long time based on what they just issued. Now, the case and issue in question is a decision which involves a last-minute preliminary injunction that was issued by a federal district court in Virginia against the state of Virginia. This preliminary injunction prohibits the state of Virginia from removing from its voter rolls over 1,600 individuals who either have declared themselves on their own a non-citizen or were confirmed by the federal government to actually be non-citizens. So this is not necessarily just people we're saying that we have no real classification of who they are. They've either designated on their own that they're non-citizens and that they are disqualified from voting, or in some way the federal government has declared or found that they are non-citizens, and again, that potentially they're disqualified from voting. Now, the lower court here on review granted a preliminary injunction blocking this Virginia law. Now, this was a last-minute preliminary injunction that was issued by the federal district court, and it was based on the National Voter Registration Act, also known as the NVRA. Now, the lower court based their decision on the NVRA despite the fact that the overreaching purpose of this NVRA is to enhance the participation of eligible citizens as voters. Now, in essence, the district court used a law that says its goal and purpose is to enhance citizen participation, and they use that as support to allow non-citizens to potentially continue to be on voter rolls and participate in the election. The plaintiffs in these challenges brought various lawsuits against the state of Virginia and this law, and various officials were also sued in their official capacities, and the goal was to halt and remove this process and remove or block the removal process that was being engaged in by the state of Virginia. Now, these cases were ultimately consolidated and then decided by that federal district court in Virginia. The court granted the plaintiff's request for a preliminary injunction and blocked the process of removing the non-citizens from those voter rolls. Now, interestingly, in the decision from the lower court, they actually used some precedent and some case law and some laws saying that they would proceed forward with their decision and they would operate as if there was not a looming election. Now, that's clearly wrong because we are just days out right now from an election, a federal election about the presidency and all these other elections going on, but the lower court operated as if there was not a looming election. Now, in response to that decision, the state of Virginia then appealed up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. They asked for the Fourth Circuit to reverse that decision, and so there is still currently a pending appeal. But along with that, they requested a stay of that lower court decision. They wanted the Fourth Circuit to grant an emergency stay on that lower court decision, which would then allow the state of Virginia to still engage in this program. However, on review, the Fourth Circuit denied that emergency stay. The three-judge panel found that the factors for an emergency stay were not met by the state of Virginia and the officials. The panel believed that there was no irreparable injury that would happen absent the stay being granted by the Fourth Circuit. They argued that the state of Virginia could still prevent non-citizens from voting even with the preliminary injunction in place. The court argued that the state could still cancel registration of an individual on an individual case-by-case basis if it popped up, And then also they could prosecute any non-citizen if they were found to be engaging in this conduct, which is prohibited. The Fourth Circuit believed that the National Voter Registration Act and that 90-day quiet period before an election requires that this state program be blocked, since it's a program that removes the names of ineligible voters from the official list of eligible voters. Now, in response to that, the state argued that the quiet period provision does not cover non-citizens at all. So even the most systematic efforts to remove non-citizens from voter registration lists within 90 days of the federal election are immune from judicial scrutiny. And that is what the state of Virginia is arguing, that this quiet provision and this law here does not apply to non-citizens. It is focused only on participation of actual citizens. The Fourth Circuit found that those arguments were unpersuasive and denied the state's request for an emergency stay of that lower court decision. So the Virginia law remained blocked. In response to that, the state of Virginia and the officials there then filed an emergency petition up to the United States Supreme Court. They asked for an emergency stay order from the Supreme Court, and they asked for the Supreme Court to grant that emergency stay, by this Tuesday. They wanted a response by Tuesday, October 29th, because of the looming election. And we just received a 6-3 emergency order from the Supreme Court siding with the state of Virginia and this program in the state. This order from the Supreme Court states that the application for stay presented to the Chief Justice and by him referred to the court is granted. The October 25th, 2024 order of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia is stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit and disposition of the petition for a writ of certiorari if such a writ is timely sought. Should certiorari be denied, the state shall be terminated automatically. In the event certiorari is granted, the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of the judgment of this court. Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, and Justice Jackson would deny the application. So again, that was a 6-3 order. The only dissenting justices were the liberal progressive justices Kagan, Jackson, and Sotomayor. So in this 6-3 emergency order, the Supreme Court has granted the stay of the state of Virginia and is allowing the state and potentially other states with similar programs to remove those non-citizen names from the voter rolls leading up to this election. Now, you may be asking yourself, what does this order do and what are the defendants going to do? What options do they have going forward? Well, in all reality, the Supreme Court order will remain in place for the foreseeable future. That order by the Supreme Court requires that the stay here that is issued by the Supreme Court, that it remains in place until the Fourth Circuit decides on the appeal. And even after the Fourth Circuit rules in this case, then it's going to remain in place until the, either side here decides what they want to do. If they want to go to Supreme Court for a writ of cert, this stay will remain in place until the Supreme Court decides if they're going to take the case or deny the case. And ultimately, it's going to remain in place until the Supreme Court decides what they want to do ultimately on kind of the merits of this case. That means practically that the state of Virginia will be able to continue to do this removal program during the upcoming election. There is no way that the Fourth Circuit will hear and rule on this case before then, and there's no way that this would make it to the Supreme Court, be heard and ruled on before next week. And that means that the state of Virginia just got a huge win through this emergency order. This is now the second huge election decision that we've got in just the last week. Recently, the Fifth Circuit ruled and blocked the state of Mississippi in their attempt to allow mail-in ballots that extend out beyond 5 days after the election date. In that decision, the Fifth Circuit found that we have an election day for a very specific reason, and that means that mail-in ballots need to be postmarked and received by the election day, not after. That Fifth Circuit decision is not taking immediate effect and really will only be binding on states like Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, but it does set a strong precedent for future legal challenges and will no doubt also be elevated to the Supreme Court, and it's probably going to make its way to the Supreme Court on an emergency basis. But here you have this emergency stay order from the Supreme Court, which would signal also what they would do potentially in that Fifth Circuit decision if it made its way to them. And this stay order here in Virginia will not only impact that state there, Virginia, but also maybe open the door for other states that want to engage in similar programs or who have similar programs and are doing this process. So again, another huge election decision, and this time it's coming directly from the Supreme Court through a 6-3 emergency stay order. And I anticipate going forward during this week and potentially even after the election, we're going to have even more election decisions that are going to be coming out from the Supreme Court. circuit courts, lower courts. And so it's going to be very interesting, and it's a very interesting time right now in the legal world and then also in the political world. So if you guys found value in this video, please share this video around if you found it helpful. And if we get any more information, if anything else develops, I will let you guys know. So if you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.